All right, let's just jump right into it. What does it actually mean to be a good man today? I mean, it sounds like such a simple question, doesn't it? But wow, is it loaded? It might be one of the most complicated questions a person can ask themselves. And for so many people, this isn't some abstract philosophical debate. It is deeply, intensely personal. It feels a lot like this confession right here. This just perfectly captures that awful feeling of being stuck, of falling short of some invisible standard you can't even define. So the real question then is, how do you bridge that gap? How do you get from that feeling of not being enough to a place of real, genuine strength and self-respect? Well, that's the journey we're going to map out in this explainer, from that place of self-doubt to something a whole lot more solid. To figure out where we're going, we first have to get a handle on where we've come from. So let's start by looking at the old blueprint, the traditional model for masculinity that's been passed down for generations. So sociologists David and Brannon, they actually broke this down into 4 core rules. Think of it as the historical playbook. First up, no sissy stuff. Pretty clear, anything seen as feminine was off limits. Then, the big wheel. This was all about the grind, achieving success, status, being on top. Third, the sturdy oak. You had to be a rock. Tough, self-reliant, always in control. And finally, give him hell. Basically, be aggressive, take risks, be brave. You put all that together and you get a really, really narrow box that defined what a man was supposed to be. And this isn't just some old theory. You can see the real-world impact of that blueprint right here. This quote's from a study where this 70-year-old man, Max, literally felt he couldn't be a good husband because he couldn't provide financially anymore. I mean, think about that. For him, failing at that one big wheel rule meant he had to completely opt out of being a partner. That's just how deep these ideas can run. So, what happens when that old, rigid blueprint smacks head-on into the realities of modern life and relationships? Well, that's where things get complicated. This is where the friction really starts. This research just lays the conflict bare. You can see here, women overwhelmingly preferred an equal partnership, right across the board. Sharing income, housework, childcare, the whole deal. But many men, they were still leaning on that more traditional model, wanting to be the main provider with, let's say, limited responsibilities at home. You can literally see the collision course right there in the data. But here's the thing. The power dynamics aren't always what the stereotypes would have us believe. This next quote, it's pretty harrowing. It's from a study on men who've experienced intimate partner violence. A man named Frederick was put through years of emotional abuse, with his wife using threats about their own children as a weapon to control him. It's just a stark reminder that this kind of psychological violence, it can happen to anyone. So when all these external pressures and these internal conflicts just become overwhelming, the result can be a really devastating internal collapse. This is the breaking point. And a mind in crisis? Well, it often sounds like this. It starts with this feeling that you are your own worst enemy. And then that feeling just bleeds out into everything else until there's no joy left in anything. And eventually, it just all crumbles into this desperate, raw cry for help, this feeling of being completely, utterly stuck with no idea how to move forward. And let's be absolutely clear, this is not just about feeling bad. That study on male victims documents severe clinical consequences. We're talking about crippling anxiety and depression, a profound sense of shame, isolating yourself from the world, and for some, even suicidal thoughts. This is the real human cost of these dynamics. Okay, so that's the problem, that's the conflict, and that's the collapse. It's heavy. So how do you possibly rebuild from there? Well, the good news is there is a path forward, and it's not about some magic fix. It's based on developing practical, learnable skills. And the foundation for this path is a concept from neuroscience called inhibitory control. Now, it sounds complicated, but all it really means is the ability to stop your automatic, knee-jerk reactions so you can choose a better, more thoughtful response instead. Honestly, the easiest way to think about it is this. Inhibitory control is your brain's braking system. It's that mental muscle that stops you from just lashing out in anger, or from saying that hurtful thing you know you'll regret, or just shutting down when things get tough. It's really the core of emotional regulation. So how do you actually use this in a relationship? Well, here are 4 concrete skills, and you'll see how every single one is about strengthening that mental braking system. 1. Actually listen. That means hitting the brakes on your own urge to talk so you can really hear them. 2. Have regular check-ins. You gotta hit the brakes on your defensiveness to ask for real, honest feedback. 3. Be vulnerable. This means hitting the brakes on that deep instinct to just hide your feelings away. And 4, be reliable. Hit the brakes on the impulse to take the easy way out and instead just follow through on your promises. When you start to put all these pieces together, what emerges is a completely new and frankly much healthier definition of what strength actually is. And you can see the shift right here. The old sturdy oak was about being a provider and being emotionally controlled, which, let's be honest, usually meant locked down. This new strength is about being a reliable partner and being emotionally regulated, meaning you have conscious control over your responses. It's a huge difference. It's not just about never hitting someone. It's about having the internal strength not to. And this is where it all comes together. This is a really powerful quote from John, one of the men in that violent study. He completely reframed his entire idea of masculinity around this one principle. He realized that real strength, it wasn't about aggression at all. It was about restraint. It was about making a conscious, difficult choice. So where does all this leave us? Maybe we've been asking the wrong question this whole time. What if the goal isn't to finally arrive at some destination called a good man? What if, instead, the goal is simply to commit to being a person who never stops trying to be better? Someone who keeps building those skills, strengthening that internal braking system, and showing up for others and for themselves day after day. Maybe that's what it's all about.